Welcome to Straight Talk. Our topic today is crime in the United States and what facility management professionals can do to enhance security. And with me today is a true expert, Johnathan Tal, the Chief Executive Officer of Tal Global Corporation, an international investigative and risk consulting firm. Johnathan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jeff. Good to be here.
But let's start with this, Johnathan. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, a little history, and how you got to where you're at today?
I grew up in Israel. In the 1970s, I was in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. I was involved in the 1973 war with Egypt and Syria and various other countries. Actually came out of that experience, and as a young 21-year-old with not enough brains and too much testosterone, as I often say, I ended up doing some more work for the Israeli government, mostly in counterterrorism. I was based in the UK, did aviation security work for the Israeli airline, and was there for a couple of years. Moved to the US, went to college, and decided to stay in the security field. So I'm just about coming up on 40 years of practice here in the US. I served as the president and chairman of the board of the International Association for my profession. Our clients for Tal Global are varied across manufacturing, high-tech, hospitality, health systems, health providers, developers, you name it. We've been around for many years and have pretty much seen it all.
I have to say that makes you an expert in my book. So thank you for your time today to share some of your expertise on security and identifying risks and dealing with that. So I have a few questions for you. Let's go ahead and get into those. This is an easy one here. Has crime increased in the US since the pandemic? And is it happening all around the country?
So yes, the answer is yes, and it's easy, but the why is a different story. So let's just jump into some numbers as to how much crime has increased over the last couple of years. So the FBI has some figures for us on this because they track it. Violent crime is overall up by 12% across the US. For example, motor vehicle theft up by 50%. Homicides and violent crime is significantly up. For example, in Chicago, it's up 33%, New York 14%, LA 36%. Overall, there were just some numbers. There were 21,570 murders in 2020, which is up by 30% from 2019. We see it actually growing further in 2021 and 2022. And maybe of more significant is not just the crime, it's the mass shootings. In 2022, so far we have 250. So this year could well end up at about 700. For example, in 2019, there were 417 mass shootings. By the end of 2020, 611, and now we're heading into, in 22, maybe 700. So it's significant, it is voluminous, and it's worrisome.
I think most, when they think about our topic today, they're thinking about those mass shootings with what we've seen in the news. So that's on the mind of people. But Johnathan, why has it increased so much since the pandemic?
So that's the key question. Why is it increased? So people are clearly in a position that no one in our generation, prior generation, a couple of generations back, 100 years ago, has been. The pandemic has put on new pressures, new parameters. Businesses closed, people lost their lives. People lost their way of making a living. Businesses were closed. Americans are afraid, and it's not just Americans. I think it's around the world. And when people are afraid, they believe conspiracy theories. They get into kind of a loop, because when you miss the interaction with other people, you're more inclined to kind of cook within yourself in your own juice. Add to this the tensions, the interracial tensions of the killing of George Floyd in 2020. And clearly there is significant change in the environment, and that all those tensions put together add to this our obsession. I want to say obsession with guns, and we do have one. And since the pandemic, people have been on a buying binge and spree of buying guns. And when the guns are available and tensions are high and conditions are difficult, that is the result. The result is a jump in crime, and people are more inclined to do more harm, and are less connected to their fellow human beings.
Yeah, can be scary at times for many people.
Yep.
Let's talk about social media. Do you see that as an impact on our conversation today? Is that increasing things?
Yeah, so I have kids. I still have one in high school, and I learn as a boomer, as someone who grew up in the 60s and 70s, I learn how social media is changing and the role that it takes in everyday's life for people today. And I'm amazed by it. But in my field, we see it's a double-edged sword. Okay, on one hand, younger generations, young people are so immersed in social media that if you're not on it, if you're not seen, you don't exist. And I think that is reflecting in crime as well. I mean, we've seen criminals using social media to connect, using social media to encourage each other. People get the call to do a smash and grab, and they go in and they do it because social media has, the circle has announced it, and we see a definite increase, and it's a way to communicate. It's very quick, and it's what people use nowadays. On the other hand, when I say it's a double-edged sword, law enforcement is comprised of smart people as well, and they read social media and they follow it. So it's also become an investigative tool of first degree to try and prevent and solve crimes. Whereas before you would go interview people, now you look at social media and you have some information you didn't have before. So it's an interesting phenomenon. It's here to stay. We need to learn how to use it. Those of us who are what's called internet immigrants, people who immigrated from a desktop and a non-connected devices to this networked world we're in. We need to be on top of it, because that is here to stay.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that law enforcement is doing a good job with that, with looking at social media, spotting potential issues, and stepping in?
I think better and better.
Okay.
I think there's more to do. The federal law enforcement agencies are more sophisticated, but I got to tell you, I'll tell you a story. Back in 1983, I was involved as a witness and as a participant. I guess I was involved in solving a case of murder for hire, and even at that point, the department I was working with was the San Jose Police Department. They had a high-tech crime unit at that time. We're talking 1983, much before the internet as we know it today. And those large departments and federal law enforcement have adjusted, and they are doing a good job. It's always, it's always catch up. It's always catch-up game. You're always trying to understand what the criminals are doing, rather than there is no way to predict it in the first place. So yes, they're doing a good job. They could do better, and there's never going to be a perfect performance.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, it has to be a challenge. So we've covered a lot of territory so far. Let's tie in the ISSA world, facility managers, those that take care of buildings. So what can they do right now to ensure a higher level of safety for those that come into buildings like schools, hospitals, government buildings, and so on?
Right. So we work with those folks on a regular basis. We work with their tenants. We work with people who lease buildings and with the various companies that own buildings and manage buildings. From the Cushman Wakefields to the Tishmans, the variety of the players in that field. And I think the first step everyone needs to take nowadays is to assess what is your risk, what is your particular building, what is your particular site. Clearly, if you're in the middle of Oakland or LA versus in the fields of Columbus, your risk level is different, your risk reasons are different, your risk profile is different. And we don't advocate, I do not advocate 100% 100% proofness from crime. It's not possible, it's not feasible, and it's not reasonable. What you need to be is the old story about the two hunters who spot a bear, and one of them is starting to run, the other one is putting on his running shoes. And the guy running saying, why are you, get out? And he said, no, I don't need to get away from the bear. The only thing I need to do is to get away faster than you. And we advocate that our clients be reasonably protected compared to their environment. So the key is to be better than your environment, to be more resilient, to be a harder target. First of all, you need to understand, in order to do this, you need to understand what your vulnerabilities, what are the hazards, whether they are man-made or whether there are natural floods, fires, earthquakes, whatever. All of that, all hazard approach is the approach. And then you need to look at the staff, at the people who are coming into the building, the other risks that are coming in from the nature of the work or the nature of the activity taking place in the environment. For example, hospitals. Hospitals, by definition, are open to the public. They're an open environment. They're welcoming, helping. That's what they're about. They are the most difficult places to protect. And yet, because you need to balance this ability to help people and to welcome them and to be of service to them with restricting people you don't want in there. And it's very, very challenging. So you need to do the assessment, and then you build up a program that's stemming out and rising out of the highest risks that you have, bringing you to a reasonable risk level so that you can manage the building for the benefit of your tenants, your staff, and obviously your owners.
So a risk assessment is the key to get this done, to identify all the things you described. Can you speak to how long a risk assessment might take, what it might cost, and also what kind of changes that might mean for a building?
So, most modern buildings have, when they're designed, they have some kind of an entrance and a lobby and an environment to screen the people coming in, coming out. We were just involved in a development in San Francisco, 27 acres, that were converted from an open space. There are going to be 4 buildings. You're going to be able to move around those 4 buildings and a park, and it's very close to the Giant Stadium, and it's a really high visibility area. And designing security around this area requires understanding what the structures are about, how people are going to be interfacing, moving in and out from the park environment into an office building, into a residential building, mixed use. So risk assessment should not take very long. If you're talking about a high rise, we do those a few days. I mean, the time that it takes to do the work is less than a week. The cost ranges, I'd say for a high rise, maybe between $12,000, $13,000 to no more than 20. We bring in folks that are very, very experienced in that, and they come in, they do the risk assessments and all hazard. We look at anything that could be impacting the building or its tenants, and we provide a very comprehensive report with a list of improvements, some of which cost nothing, some of which are just procedural and policies. They're not about installing cameras or access control systems.
Okay. And a school, let's say a school, that could involve what? Security at the door and making sure things are secure?
So schools, again, kind of like hospitals, they are open
Okay.
environments. It's need, students need to come in and go out. Parents need to be in and out. There's got to be a system by which to screen who is available and who is not. And in today's environment, unfortunately and sadly, we need to design a element of response. So should there be, even by a student, an attack, there should be a very quick response with appropriate force to deal with any risk. So it's a little bit different than an office building. It's closer to a hospital or to an open environment. And there are, my friend Errol Southers, who works with me, have been for years and years, has cut his teeth in schools. And he says, you've seen one school and you've seen one school. And the meaning of that is everyone is different. Every environment, every cultural milieu, every group of people are different. We need to be looking at them differently, but there are definitely some similarities.
Well, Johnathan, I appreciate your time today. This is great information. Our members, those who take care of buildings, hopefully will be able to take away something to make them more secure as we march through this crazy world. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.